Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ybot, and today we're going to look at tanking as a Death Knight here. We're going to start with just the easy AoE tanking that you'll probably do on your daily little bar grinds here. So what you'll want to do with that is, there's no real specific order for this sort of thing. I started with dropping Defile, then I dropped an Outbreak as soon as I had enough runic power, and then I'm spreading it around with Blood Boil, and I'm using Death Strike whenever possible. So that's pretty much all I'm doing there. The specifics of what you should do with that is, according to Icy Veins here, which is the source that I'm going to be using here, and I highly recommend you check it out. You can check out the stuff that I'm looking at here under icyveins.com in the WoW section, and Death Knight PvE tanking rotation cooldowns abilities, etc. It does not actually say etc., but if you Google Icy Veins Death Knight, it'll bring you to where I am more or less. So, let's take a look at the multi-target tanking abilities here. So as I said, use Blood Boil and Defile on cool. When taking multiple enemies, your go-to ability is Blood Boil. You should use Defile on cooldown. That is the case all the time. You still want to use Death Strike on any enemy for self-heal, and Mastery Blood Shield benefits from using that ability. It'll provide a shield for a certain amount of the damage that you deal to the target. And you still want to dump your runic power whenever you can with Death Coil. So, now we've got a single target guy in front of us. In fact, we have Bell Overseer Mudlump, who is a familiar face from Burning Crusade, actually. He was on Netherwing Ledge, and he is the great and illustrious inventor of the Boomerang, a weapon which boots peons in the head when they're sleeping, and then comes back to you. It works like a it works like a boomerang, rather, but it's a boot. So, anyway, let's go over the single target rotation here on this fella right here, and we'll go over this a couple of times. I've got a couple of boss fights to show you here. So, what you'll want to do, according to Icy Veins here, is initiate the fight with applying Outbreak, or you can do anything else. You can use a Death Grip, you can use your Dark Command, which is your taunt. You could use Death Coil if you've got the runic power for it. And then basically you want to get your diseases up as soon as possible, usually using Outbreak, and then after that you refresh them with Blood Boil. On a single target fight, you'll want to once again have Defile on, use it on cooldown, use it as often as you can. This is pretty much a priority list. Use your Frost, Unholy, and Death Ruins on Death Strike. Basically, you want to use Death Strike as often as possible, and use your Blood Ruins on Blood Boil. And if you get a Crimson Scourge proc, and you've got Defile down already, then go ahead and use it on Blood Boil. They talk about using Blood Tap, because it's the, they consider it to be the more optimum choice. I am a lazy tank, I'll be honest. I want things to be as simple as possible, so I chose the talent that just refreshes ruins by using up runic power, so I just spam Death Coil. Oh, and by the way, Death Coil is your runic power dump, and just good for generating DPS. So we've got a little fight now with Ner'zhul here, which is actually not going to be that long at all, because it's the end of the expansion and people are way too high geared for this sucker, and he just goes down like a sack of potatoes. So, fortunately, I also decided to show you guys a raid fight here, actually. And we've got the illustrious Terran Gorefiend, or Gorefiend as he's called here. And this is a raid fight, so for a portion of the fight, I will not be tanking. It'll be done by the Paladin tank here, the Tauren Paladin tank. And as I say in all of the raid videos that I do, please make sure that you have your fellow tank on focus, so that you know what's going on with him. You know that he's got certain debuffs, like in this one, you can get a debuff that'll actually kill you, and in this case, it's now showing me that he's actually in Terran Gorefiend's tummy. So I am now the tank. So what you'll want to do in this sort of thing is pretty much the same as before. In this particular case, or in the case of my setup here, what I would recommend is just using your various abilities. Blood Boil and Death Strike usually generate the 40 runic power you need to drop an Outbreak. And then if you're got any more than one foe, I would recommend using Blood Boil immediately after that. But anyway, what you normally want to do here is, once again, use Defile on cooldown, keep it up as often as possible, use Death Strike as much as humanly possible, and use your Blood Runes, whatever ones you get, on Blood Boil, and don't use any Death Runes on it, because you save those for Death Strike, because it's your self-heal, it does more damage, and it also provides a shield, once again, through the mastery that you have, the Blood Shield Mastery. So it is really, really, really good for tanking. And just dump all your runic power when you don't need it through Death Coil. Now, something you need to keep in mind as a Death Knight, even as a tank actually, you do have a battle res that's up here. So you can raise an ally, but it's going to cost runic power. So if you see that happen, hold off on the Death Coils for a little bit, and actually go ahead and raise them if nobody else has raised them. Now, let's move on to survival cooldowns here. So, things you'll want to know here about the survival cooldowns. The short-based ones, the ones that have low cooldowns, are Rune Tap, and which reduces damage taken by 40% for 3 seconds, so it reduces a decent amount of damage. It does have 2 charges, and then it has a 30-second recharge time. If you drop below 30% health, you will be granted a cost-free Ruin Tap thanks to Will of Necropolis, actually, which is kind of interesting. So that's one of your passive abilities as a Blood Death Knight. I should also mention, this is probably something that's really obvious, but you need to be in Blood Presence all the time. It is your tanking presence. Just something that I saw on Icy Veins there, I thought I'd bring to your attention. Anti-Magic Shell is your magic mitigation spell. It'll reduce all damage taken from magic by up to, or by 100% up to a maximum of 50% of your health. And it will last, if it doesn't use up the whole thing, it'll last for 5 seconds. Icebound Fortitude is your great big tanking cooldown, which grants you 50% damage reduction for 8 seconds, and also immunity to stun effects. Oh, wait a second. It says something completely different elsewhere here. Anyway, I'm going to trust Icy Veins and say the 50% damage reduction bonus here. Dancing Rune Weapon, which is another tool in your toolbox. It's actually a fairly low cooldown, 1.5 minutes. It grants plus 20% parry and also increases threat generation because the dancing, or actually that's only with the glyph of Dancing Rune Weapon, but basically it summons a mirror of your weapon that does a little bit less damage, but still does significant damage. Army of the Dead, of course, we all know that one. It summons a legion of ghouls to fight for you for 40 seconds, and they taunt whatever they can, and they turn fights into a mess. But usually it's a good mess and favorable to your group most of the time. And finally, Bone Shield. Bone Shield is a very good ability here. It just reduces 20% of all damage taken. I recommend using it on cooldown. I have it bound to my number 1 key to use it whenever it's off of cooldown, and I can. So that pretty much sums up everything we need to know here, except for Vampiric Blood and Empowered Runic Weapon. So, Empowered Runic Weapon instantly recharges all your ruins and grants 25 runic power, and Vampiric Blood gives you a little bit of extra health. It's kind of like a Death Knight Last Stand, but it also increases the healing you receive, which is very good. Now then, I've moved on here to the tanking trials here, because it's something that I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people still have problems with even now, because they're tricky little bastards. I've had fully geared Death Knights, well, actually, yeah, I had a Death Knight that was geared for it's level 630, I believe, is the appropriate level for dungeons. So he was geared for that. My other Death Knight, Varg, was geared for that, and he got his ass kicked by these trials. So turns out they're very, very tricky little buggers here, which is kind of annoying because they are actually tanking a heroic at this point is actually so much easier just because of the gear inflation here. Like, gear inflation has made things ridiculous. Once upon a time, these trials were a good introduction, but at this point they're kind of an annoyance. So anyway, I'm just going to have a quick go through here. This is a successful run, and I'll go over the what I'm doing and strategies that you should probably follow, what I've learned, like, doing this and also after this. First off, most obviously, you want to keep the enemies off Sequoia as much as possible. And for these guys here, well, for these guys it's not as important, but you should still probably try to interrupt them as much as you can. You can interrupt them through several means here. You can use Strangulate, which actually costs the Blood Rune. You can use Brain Freeze, I believe is... No, Mind Freeze. That's one. It's called Mind Freeze. And, of course, with these guys, you want to drop Defile. And Defile should work, actually, on magical damage, I would assume, too, because it's just, like, 10% of all damage, right? So, maybe it's different. Maybe I'm wrong. Oh, and also the AoE Freeze ability is very handy, because it will interrupt these guys, and it'll keep them in place and stop them from nailing you with Pyroblasts repeatedly. Anti-magic shell is also a good ability to use for those little bastards too, because it'll just straight up make you stop taking damage from the Pyroblasts. So Death Knights have a lot of tools in their toolbox for this particular fight, for these trials. And pretty much, just to summarize it here, the main things you really have to worry about are the fire callers, the large fire callers, and the wind guards. Now, let's see here. So, yeah, I'm letting Sequoia get hit. She can take a few hits, but yeah, drop a Defile, pop Blood Boil. Usually one of the guys will have your diseases on him already. If not, cast Outbreak. Just pop Blood Boil to spread the diseases. Use Death Strike whenever you can to self-heal and get a bit of a shield up. And then just dump your runic power with Death Coil. Now for these guys right here, I've noticed an interesting little trick, because they, every so often, they knock you back and they change targets. What you can do with that is you can actually just accept your new position, the position they've knocked you back to, and you can go ahead and you can actually taunt them once they get to Sequoia and maybe get 1 or 2 hits off, and you can force them to come after you and do no damage in transit while Sequoia beats the living crap out of them. So that's a trick that can be used sometimes. You want to be careful with it, because they do hit really hard, so if they decide to just go back and hit Sequoia, then you're going to have to start really wailing on them, but you can kite them a little bit. It is possible. Alright, now we're at wave number 7 here, so we've got this guy, we've got the basic Ripper there, which I just decided to let him beat on Sequoia, because he doesn't do as much damage, relatively speaking, as the others, and I recommend, honestly, at this point, or at some point in the fight, probably either the second last wave or the last wave, just go ahead and use Army of the Dead. There's no reason not to, really. It'll just rip the little bastards to shreds, especially, possibly you might want to hold on to the very last wave, when you deal with the last fire caller who hits like a truck, because he is quite a problem. But I mean, they're doing a great job here. My boys are doing a great job keeping the wing guard off of me. They didn't do as great of a job dealing with this little bastard here. But, yeah, you do have a lot of interrupt options with a Death Knight here. You can go ahead, you can, like I said, you can use anti-magic shell to just avoid it entirely. You can use Strangulate, you can use Mind Freeze, and you can use Death Grip to interrupt him in the middle of a cast. So, oh, and also the AoE Freeze. That's pretty damn good as well. I probably should have saved that until I had Death Gripped this large fire caller into range of it here, but oh well. And yeah, pretty much at this point, just use your cooldowns as necessary. There's various survivability cooldowns that you might want to keep in mind, like Death Pact, and I've taken a lot of frickin' damage here, so I think, yeah, no, I had the other ability on cooldown already, but yeah, once it's just this guy and the Ripper, then it's not as bad, but things that have gotten me several times is when you're dealing with this guy plus a Wingguard and the Ripper all together at the same time. That's a problem. So, stuns are your friends, folks. And yeah, this guy will go down, and that's my best explanation here on short notice of how to complete a trial there. So that pretty much concludes the video for today, guys. Thank you very much for watching, folks. I hope you found this video to be informative and entertaining. In the meantime, if you want to see more of my WoW stuff, please subscribe to my channel. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you disliked it, give it a thumbs down. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.